After seeing Matt Reeves The Batman, I realized one thing. Batman is the only superhero out there that actually works as a serious film character. I loved Spider-Man as a kid, but let's face it, there's only so much you can do with that character in a movie. It's all just so ridiculous. No matter how good the actor is or how great the VFX get, it's still a guy who got bit by an insect and is now just swinging around like an idiot fighting cartoon villains. And that goes without saying for most superheroes, especially the ones with superpowers. I guess Iron Man is similar to Batman, in that it's a rich kid with a lot of money and his superpower is inheriting his father's wealth. But you can't really make that film without pretty much making a sci-fi film about a guy in a flying suit. Batman, on the other hand, is so human, and real, and dark, sometimes too dark, and realistic. Well, maybe not this one, but the other ones. It's a good character and you can do a lot with it. But there is only one question. Which Batman film is actually the best Batman film? Let's find out. When I first saw the trailer for The Batman, I was underwhelmed. I thought, do we really need another Bruce Wayne origin story? And does Bruce have to be an emo vampire? But the film is great. Even if it's too long and too dark, literally the picture is too dark sometimes. You can't even tell what's going on. But overall, it just looks great. One of my favorite YouTubers, Patrick Tommaso, actually has a great video about why the movie looks as good as it does. I have linked it in the description. But it's not just the way it looks. It has very subtle shots, like this shot of Bruce Wayne watching Catwoman disappear, realizing he had to let go of the chance to be happy. Or the way the car chase ends, with that theme which I can't use in the edit because I'll get a strike, but I can sing it to you. Dun, 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 dun. Everything about this film is cinematic, and it's definitely the best Batman film in terms of filmmaking. But is it the best Batman film in terms of how I think Batman himself as a character is portrayed? No. So I'm sorry to say, this film is great, and I can't wait for its sequel, but I don't think it's the best Batman film. Mainly because I don't think it really nails Bruce Wayne. Now, usually when people rate Batman films, this gets the #1 spot, and for good reason. It's a hell of a ride. I remember watching it in IMAX when it came out. Towards the end, I thought my head was about to explode from everything that had happened. It wasn't just a movie, it was like a worldwide event. So many things happened in the film, so much intensity from every storyline, and even though it's cheesy, I have always loved the actual ending of the film, with Gordon's speech about Batman not being the hero the city deserves.
Because it's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now.
It's cliche as fuck, and people have used that line ad nauseum since, but it worked so well in the film and just left you wanting more. And who can forget Heath Ledger? Now look, this will sound mean, but I do think that the fact that he passed away so tragically before the film was released helped his performance get notoriety before people have even seen the film, especially with the rumors that the role itself took a huge toll on him. It was a bit of the Kurt Cobain effect, because I don't think Nirvana would be as legendary today if Kurt was still with us, all Botoxed up with a hair transplant or a wig, charging $800 a ticket through Ticketmaster and giving people a chance to bitch about how old he looks now and how he can't sing like in the 90s. Maybe there would be a cringe-worthy video of him being forced to sing badly at a wedding or something. So the fact that these two talented individuals got taken away from us so early kinda helped with the overwhelmingly positive posthumous acclaim they both received. Having said that, I do think Heath's role was great. It was a very memorable role that elevated The Dark Knight to more than just a superhero film. It was a spectacular cinematic event. It's only after you re-watch The Dark Knight a bunch of times that you begin to see a few ridiculous aspects of the story that kinda cheapen the whole thing a little bit. The Joker himself being this all-powerful, all-knowing villain that was just 10 steps ahead of everyone else, even though he came out of nowhere, just doesn't sit well with me after repeated viewings. He took down all leaders of the mob, the whole police force, the most promising DA and Batman himself, all in a few well-calculated moves that went exactly according to plan, all while the movie kept talking about how he just wants to watch the world burn and has no actual plan. And Harvey turning into Two-Face felt rushed. The way he, no pun intended here, turned on a dime after just one scene, from the incorruptible, fearless White Knight of Gotham City to a supervillain just like that. I get what the movie was trying to say and that the Joker basically still won by ruining the guy, but it should have been a different movie with more time to get to know the character Not just an encore after the main Joker storyline ended. I think a good villain has to be grounded in reality. Hell, they even managed to make Thanos look human, and with realistic motives you could relate to, and he's a walking CGI pimple. So the fact that Nolan didn't ground these two villains more is why this movie is not the best Batman movie. It takes a comfortable number 2 spot behind The Batman for cinematography and filmmaking efforts, but it's not the best Batman film. And we can all agree, neither is The Dark Knight Rises, the film that ended the Nolan trilogy by ripping off Good Will Hunting.
You know what the best part of my day is? For about 10 seconds from when I pull up to the curb and when I get to your door. Because I think maybe I'll get up there and I'll knock on the door and you won't be there. No goodbye, no see you later, no nothing. I'm just left.
I had this fantasy that I would look across the tables and I'd see you there. You wouldn't say anything to me, nor me to you.
I love Michael Keaton, always have. And these two Batman films from Tim Burton pretty much started it all, with a high-effort big superhero movie from a big director setting the tone for what was about to happen with these comic book heroes and the nerds all over the world. But even though seeing Batman's Batmobile come to life, and actually seeing a real in-the-flesh Batman on TV blew my mind as a kid, these two films haven't really aged that well. I keep reading comments all the time about Jack Nicholson's Joker being the best Joker. Really, Jack is an acting legend, no doubt about it, but come on. This performance has aged terribly, and so many other scenes look like bad theater directed by Tobias from Arrested Development.
And now we'll see if some sparks fly.
The sets, the over-the-top acting. It's hard to take these films seriously right now. We should respect and appreciate them for what they were when they were made. Those were wildly different times. But let's not kid ourselves here. These are not good movies by any standard. And unless you watch them because of nostalgia, there's no way you can convince me anything in here has aged well. But hey, we had to start somewhere when putting these characters on screen. Tim deserves credit for actually laying the foundation. The Joel Schumacher era, just no. The Zack Snyder era, also no. Lego Batman? Shut up, nerds.
The slightest impact was sufficient to instantly reduce them to antimatter.
Antimatter?
Just kidding. It's Batman Begins. Not only do I think Batman Begins is the perfect Batman film, I also think it's Christopher Nolan's most human film. Our boy Chris knows how to shoot an IMAX action sequence. He also knows how to make Chicago look like a clean city, but he always struggled with the human side of his characters. He always seems to worry about the camera and making the plot as complex as possible, but he kind of forgets about the most important aspect of filmmaking, the humanity of the characters we're supposed to relate to. Don't believe me? Watch Interstellar again and notice how the ATM robot had more of a personality than all of the main characters. He's kind of a thinking man's Michael Bay. Anyway, in Batman Begins, he gets it right. Now I don't know if it's because it was his first big-budget Hollywood film and he still cared about filmmaking fundamentals back then instead of worrying about what kind of plane he can crash, or if the fact that Bruce Wayne was already a well-established character with a rich backstory that he could just use himself in his script. But Bruce Wayne felt real, and Batman felt like a consequence of what Bruce Wayne is trying to do with his life. It never felt like a prop. And that's very important when making a superhero film that you want people to take seriously. The genius of Marvel Studios is that they realized most of their superheroes are ridiculously cartoonish. They knew they didn't have their own Batman, and even if they did, they wanted a whole universe of all of them interacting with each other, so they couldn't make it dark, grim, and realistic. So they relied on the banter between them, the humor, and they kind of wink at the audience and say, look, we get it, this is cheesy, let's make it fun and stop worrying about it.
That's a fake laugh.
So by embracing the crappy costumes and by acknowledging how ridiculous the whole thing is, they managed to make very human characters you could actually relate to, even when that character is a talking tree that only says one sentence.
We are Groot.
But Nolan didn't want that for his Batman, and he probably cringed at Tim Burton's films just like I did. So instead he gave us an actually good movie that is severely underrated nowadays because its sequel completely shattered all box office records and made all the nerds wet their pants. Bruce's origin story makes sense. It's not just some afterthought, some random flashback. You get to know Bruce's father and understand what he's trying to build. So when Bruce himself does it, it just feels natural. The villain himself is set up from the beginning of the film. It isn't just some good guy whose face got blown up and is now a bad guy. He's been preparing for this moment all of his life, and the organization behind him has been doing this for ages. The character arc for Bruce is also complete. We see him evolve from a small orphan boy to a heroic, selfless guy who wants to dedicate his life to making the world a better place, just like his father did. We get to see him achieve the purpose of his life, and the rekindling of the relationship between him and his father figure Alfred. But we also see the struggle of getting there, the self-doubt, the humanity of it. He almost gave up, and he was almost defeated too. He wasn't just an all-powerful, all-knowing mastermind. Sure, he had his trust fund and some impossible technology helping him, but deep down he was still a lost boy looking for an answer. And here, when characters repeat the same line over and over again, it actually feels organic and isn't forced like in Nolan's subsequent films.
And why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
All right, we get it, Chris. Give it a rest. And in spite of this being Nolan's major Hollywood blockbuster debut, the film itself is pretty anti-Hollywood if you think about it. None of the typical blockbuster cliches are there. Bruce Wayne doesn't get a happy ending. He wins a few battles, sure, but not the war. You can argue he's accomplished his main goal of getting his revenge on Falcone. But the problems in Gotham City are so much worse than just that one mob guy, that by the time he does it, it doesn't even mean that much to him. He defeats Ra's al Ghul, sure, but at what cost? He destroys his father's legendary suspended train and his legendary mansion, which he gets the blame for, so probably no insurance money. And in spite of Batman's no-gun policy, and Bruce not wanting to harm anyone, he has learned his lesson and did not save Liam Neeson from the falling train. The woman he's always loved friend-zones him right at the end instead of making out with him.
Maybe someday when Gotham no longer needs Batman.
Even though this whole thing was just to impress her.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
But the poor simp didn't have Reddit back in those days to teach him about negging. And in the final scene, when he talks to Gordon, not only do we realize things in Gotham are still very bad, but Batman's theatrics may have made things worse. So the hero didn't just come back to his hometown, fix everything, get the girl, and ride her into the sunset. He was just an important piece of the puzzle that started a revolution, which is not a bad ending, but there's still so much more to go, and things didn't magically wrap up neatly. A real ending for a real character, and proof that when Nolan doesn't think of a gimmick like a dream or time going backwards or some wormhole bullshit, he can have human characters who act like humans and have realistic and satisfying arcs that make you feel like you've watched a real film, even if it's a Batman movie. So there you have it. If you disagree with anything I've said, let's argue in the comments. See you next time.